Suspected procurement fraud. CMSD has entered into contracts that raise serious concerns regarding procurement fraud, conflicts of interest, and misuse of public funds. Vendors with less qualified proposals and higher costs have been awarded contracts over more capable, lower-cost bidders, suggesting bid rigging, abuse of discretion, or collusion. Equity matters, informally DBA Accelerated Education Consulting. We are especially concerned about Equity Matters Consulting, a vendor previously reported by community members to both the Auditor's Office and the Department of Education. Prior investigations were narrowly focused, leaving even basic compliance issues unaddressed, such as the company's lack of state registration, allowing this entity continued access to CMSD schools. This is particularly troubling given that, in the past 2 years, CMSD has had 2 sexual predators sent to prison who victimized children within the schools and in hotels paid for by the district. CMSD has awarded contracts to vendors with serious transparency and compliance concerns, raising questions about procurement integrity and oversight. Equity Matters Consulting and Accelerated Education Consulting appear to be operated by the same individuals, primarily Sonia Murray, and function as a single enterprise under 2 different names. These entities pursue identical goals, provide the same services, and hold overlapping contracts with CMSD. The name change appears intended to obscure ongoing operations from federal authorities. Public information, including Sonia Murray's business social media, confirms that the 2 entities operate interchangeably, continuing so-called equity initiatives even after signing agreements with the federal government to discontinue DEI-related programs. Equity Matters Consulting, Accelerated Education Consulting, and Accelerated Education, a fictitious name in Missouri, are not registered to do business in Ohio and do not hold a commercial activity tax (CAT) number, despite receiving substantial payments to operate directly in CMSD schools. Ohio law requires entities earning over $150,000 in a tax year to register for CAT and pay the minimum CAT amount of $150. Equity Matters' failure to register for CAT, despite receiving CMSD contracts exceeding this threshold, raises serious questions regarding tax evasion and noncompliance with state law. CMSD has created barriers for the public to determine whether consultants are present in Cleveland for more than 20 days, a key threshold for local tax obligations, by denying public records requests on the basis that the requests are too broad in scope. Sonia Murray previously worked for Achievement Network for over 3 years, ending in August 2020. This prior employment appears to have facilitated subsequent no-bid contracts with CMSD. Payments to Equity Matters began by July 2021, creating a concerning continuity between past employment relationships and subsequent vendor contracts. Business registration records highlight additional irregularities. Equity Matters Consulting is registered at redacted, St. Louis, Missouri, 63110. The signature is Sonia L. Murray with Sonia L. Murray listed as the registered agent. Accelerated Education Consulting LLC is registered to the same Missouri address under Sonia Murray's name as of December 3, 2024. A related fictitious name, Accelerated Education Consultants, is registered at redacted, St. Louis, Missouri, 63133, 2403, a residence owned by Sean Murray, likely Sonia Murray's brother. Redacted, St. Louis, Missouri, 63110 is owned by Michael E. Darden, likely Sonia Murray's husband, and may be used as a rental through Sonia Murray's business Marta Ella Realty LLC, LC 1757934. Redacted, Fairview Heights, Illinois, 62208. 4508 is jointly owned by Michael E. Darden and Sonia Murray. No businesses registered to Sonia Murray are known to exist in Illinois, despite the apparent home-based nature of her operations. It remains unclear whether Equity Matters Consultants LLC employs individuals beyond Sonia Murray or relies on independent contractors operating through their own entities. Several affiliated entities have been identified, including Scott Cultural Consulting, LLC, Peak Leaders Collective, The Champion Method LLC, and EDU Optimus, LLC. None of these are registered to do business in Ohio. The absence of proper registration, including failure to obtain a CAT number, raises significant compliance concerns under Ohio Revised Code Section 1703.29 and Ohio tax law. In contrast, Better Lesson, a Massachusetts-based company, is duly registered in Ohio and employs Dr. Kristen Taylor, who simultaneously serves as a consultant for Equity Matters Consultants. Better Lesson began receiving CMSD contracts in 2021. The timing and circumstances of this contractual relationship raise significant questions regarding how the engagement was initiated, whether appropriate procurement processes were followed, and whether conflicts of interest exist between overlapping business affiliations. These facts indicate a pattern in which CMSD awarded contracts to essentially a single business operating under multiple names, circumventing oversight, obscuring tax obligations, and creating a high risk of procurement fraud, conflicts of interest, and misuse of public funds. Styles Consulting. In 2024, CMSD awarded this vendor a professional services contract valued at $157,000. The company is not legally registered in Ohio, possibly not registered anywhere in the U.S., and its tax and insurance documentation appear invalid or potentially fraudulent. Public records released by CMSD were heavily redacted, preventing verification of legitimacy. The W-9 form is dated 2021, 3 years prior to the contract, with critical fields left blank. Liability insurance documentation is incomplete, raising concerns of false representation or insurance fraud. Styles Consulting also appears connected to a network of other businesses with histories of tax forfeitures or lapses in registration, consistent with phoenixing, a practice in which dissolved entities are replaced with new companies to continue receiving payments while avoiding liabilities. Flow 001. CMSD selected Styles Consulting for a contract despite the existence of demonstrably better qualified and lower-cost competitors, raising serious concerns of bid rigging, abuse of discretion, or collusion. Watchdog findings. 1. Vendor identification concealment. The vendor's full name and signature are fully redacted throughout the contract. On one page, the redaction was incomplete, revealing the vendor's name. This inconsistency suggests the concealment was intentional and not for privacy purposes. Implications. Redactions prevent public and auditor verification of the vendor's legal registration and compliance. Preliminary research indicates Styles Consulting may not be registered with the Ohio Secretary of State, raising questions about its ability to legally conduct business in Ohio or elsewhere in the U.S. 2. W-9 form irregularities. The W-9 attached to the contract is dated August 26, 2021, nearly 3 years prior to the execution of the 2024 contract. The EIN field is partially redacted and contains no numbers. The SSN field is blank. Signature and address fields are redacted. Implications. A W-9 without a valid EIN or SSN is invalid for IRS purposes. CMSD appears to have made payments without applying the required 24% backup, withholding for vendors lacking valid taxpayer identification numbers. The use of an outdated W-9 raises questions of document fabrication or recycling. Targeted redactions suggest deliberate concealment of the vendor's tax identity. 3. Certificate of Liability Insurance Issues. The Accord Insurance Certificate redacts the NAIC number and policy number, preventing verification of coverage. The professional liability endorsement names CMSD as an additional insured, but the absence of a visible policy number makes enforceability impossible to confirm. Implications. Redactions prevent confirmation that the vendor maintains the required insurance. If coverage is invalid, this could constitute procurement fraud or false representation in CMSD contracting. 4. Pattern of redaction and concealment. Redactions systematically obscure vendor name, signature, tax identification number, business address, and insurance policy numbers. Implications. These fields are critical for confirming the legitimacy of a vendor. CMSD's concealment of these deficiencies, combined with evidence of payments made, raises concerns about potential misappropriation of public funds or fraud. Potential legal and regulatory violations. Wire fraud, 18 U.S.C. Section 1343. Honest services fraud, 18 U.S.C. Section 1346. False Claims Act, 31 U.S.C. Sections 3729 through 3733, if federal funds were involved. Ohio Public Records Act violations due to improper redactions. Ohio Tax Code violations, including failure to withhold or report payments due to invalid W-9. The documentation surrounding the Meme Styles Consulting contract indicates CMSD executed a $157,000 contract with a vendor who may not be legally registered and whose tax and insurance documentation is either invalid or fraudulent. CMSD redacted the key information necessary to verify the vendor's legitimacy, effectively concealing these deficiencies from auditors and the public, suggesting potential tax fraud, wire fraud, and procurement fraud. The Sister Accord LLC contract, entity number 1971790. The Cleveland Metropolitan School District CMSD entered into a $200,000 contract with the Sister Accord, an organization founded by Sonia J. Miles, for programs described as women's empowerment coaching for district administrators at 1111 Superior. This contract raises significant concerns regarding procurement integrity, conflicts of interest, governance oversight, and compliance with Ohio tax law. Commercial activity tax compliance. Although the Sister Accord is properly registered with the Ohio Secretary of State, it does not hold a commercial activity tax, CAT, number, despite receiving contracts exceeding the $150,000 threshold. Ohio law requires entities earning over $150,000 in a tax year to register for CAT and pay the minimum required amount. The absence of a CAT registration raises serious questions regarding potential tax noncompliance and evasion, and whether public funds were awarded to a vendor not fully compliant with state requirements. Personal connection. Public records and obituary research reveal that Trent Mosley, CMSD's Chief of Excellence and Culture, formerly Chief of Equity and Culture, is a godchild of Nella D. Jackson, née Brewer. Nella Jackson is Sonia Miles' mother, obit 001. This establishes a personal, familial relationship between a senior CMSD administrator and the owner of the Sister Accord. This connection creates the appearance of preferential treatment, raising questions about the fairness and impartiality of the contracting process. Procurement process concerns. The $200,000 contract was executed solely by the CMSD CEO without board approval, despite its substantial size and the potential personal connection between the vendor and a district official. By bypassing formal board oversight, the contract avoided transparency and competitive procurement standards, including requests for proposals or competitive bidding. Additionally, the services provided by the Sister Accord, team building, personal development, and empowerment programs for administrators do not align with core educational operations or direct services to students. The lack of alignment with district educational priorities, combined with the personal relationship, underscores the risk of procurement fraud, including conflicts of interest, favoritism, or self-dealing. This contract highlights systemic weaknesses in CMSD's governance and contracting procedures. If board oversight had been applied, the personal connection, potential impropriety, and lack of CAT registration may have been identified before approval. The current process undermines transparency, accountability, and public trust in the management of taxpayer funds. The Sister Accord contract executed without board approval, linked to a personal relationship between a senior administrator and the vendor, and awarded to a business not fully compliant with Ohio tax obligations, demonstrates a serious risk of procurement fraud. This situation warrants further investigation to ensure all district contracts are awarded fairly, transparently, and in the best interests of the public and students. 3K9 Productions, LLC. Marquita Brooks is suspected of receiving preferential treatment in connection with CMSD contracts due to her apparent ties with former district employee Candace Groves, who served at CMSD until December 2024 before moving to Portland Public Schools. Brooks traveled to Cleveland to perform work assigned by CMSD and stayed with Groves during the completion of these assignments, creating the appearance of an unusually close personal and professional relationship. The timing and nature of 3K9 Productions, LLC's engagement during Groves' tenure raised serious questions regarding potential conflicts of interest, insider influence, and the integrity of the contracting process. Requests from local watchdogs for records related to these contracts have been routinely denied, with the district asserting that such requests are overly broad and would require an office-wide search, further limiting transparency and oversight. Additionally, Groves made public threats of retaliation, including legal action, against individuals discussing her activities, specifically targeting local watchdogs. After members of the public challenged these threats, citing that the statements in question are based on verifiable facts, Groves deleted the posts. However, screenshots of the threats were preserved. Bell Creek Consulting. This vendor, Bell Creek Consulting, has received CMSD contracts totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars over multiple years, clearly establishing economic nexus in Ohio. Under Ohio law, any entity earning more than $150,000 in a taxable period is required to register for the Commercial Activity Tax, CAT, and remit the corresponding $150 registration fee. Bell Creek is not registered to do business in Ohio and does not have a CAT number, despite exceeding this threshold in previous school years. Awarding contracts to an entity that meets economic nexus requirements but remains unregistered and noncompliant with CAT obligations raises serious concerns, including potential evasion of Ohio commercial activity and income taxes. This represents not only a violation of state law, but also a substantial risk to taxpayer funds. The district's continued engagement with Bell Creek Consulting demonstrates a systemic failure to conduct proper due diligence and may constitute procurement fraud or willful negligence in safeguarding public resources.